Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the pretty fascinating world of digital anthropology, and our journey starts somewhere you'd probably never expect, with two kids just playing a video game.
So, get this. That's the answer author Ruth Stalker Firth got from her 9 and 10-year-old daughters when she asked about the father of their video game character's new baby. And that one, kinda weird, comment, well, it opened up this whole new world for her.
So, the game was The Sims 4. And what started as a simple attempt by a parent to get her kids to go play outside, in the sun, it quickly turned into this, fascinating window into a totally new kind of human behavior.
Now, for anyone who's not familiar, The Sims is what they call an open-world game. So there's no real winning or losing. You just, you create these little virtual people, they're called Sims, and you guide them through their lives, from building a house to getting a job to starting a family. It's its own little universe, really, with its own language and culture. So in this game world, right, with its own made-up language called Simlish and its own money called simoleons, the author's daughters found this, let's call it a brutally efficient solution. They needed their sim to have a baby, so they used the woohoo function with some random guy from the park. But then, as soon as she was pregnant, poof, they got rid of the dad. Why? Well, like they said, he was useless. And their creative problem solving, it did not stop there.
So what happens when their sim character just starts ignoring them, like refusing to feed her newborn twins? The girls just came up with a new strategy. They just started leaving mushrooms on the floor for the babies to eat. Yeah, mushrooms. And it was that moment, that totally bizarre but kind of brilliant solution, that made the author realize, okay, this isn't just a game anymore. She was watching a whole new culture unfold, right there in her living room, with its own rules, its own logic, its own behaviors.
So yeah, you can bet all thoughts of going outside were pretty much forgotten at this point. The author put on her professional hat. This wasn't just a game anymore. It was an impromptu field study.
Right there, in her own living room, she'd basically stumbled into the world of digital anthropology. And when the pros do this, they usually take one of two different approaches. So the author, she was taking what's called the ethnic approach. Observing from the outside, like a scientist with a clipboard. But a lot of anthropologists, they prefer the emic approach. They dive right in. They become part of the culture, creating their own character, living inside that virtual world to really understand it from the inside out. And believe me, The Sims is just one of many, many digital playgrounds they're exploring. I mean, think about it. Digital anthropologists have millions of us to study, doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things online across countless virtual worlds. Let's take a look at a couple of their favorite sandboxes, shall we?
Okay, first up, Second Life. This thing is less of a game and more like a whole parallel digital existence. You can literally attend real university classes, you can find a fully functioning Swedish embassy, and get this, you can even take part in a project that simulates the hallucinations of schizophrenic patients. All of this is done to better understand the condition back in the real world. Wild, right? And hey, according to the author, sometimes the researchers are the weirdest people in the room. She points out that if you ever see someone online just acting completely bizarre, it might just be an anthropologist undercover, trying to blend in. And this kind of deep dive research is happening in other massive online worlds too. Which brings us to World of Warcraft, the huge fantasy game where players are battling it out for control of this magical land. And this is where we meet Bonnie Nardi, a self-described granny gamer and anthropologist who got a pretty interesting research grant to go deep undercover. Yeah, a grant for $100,007. We'll probably never find out what that extra $7 was for, but Nardi used that cash to spend 2 full years completely embedded in the game. Her disguise? A night elf priest in a Chinese gaming guild. So, what was her mission? She wanted to test that old idea that gaming pulls people away from their real-world relationships. And how did she do it? Well, she flew to China to hang out in internet cafes with her guild members, playing right alongside them. And by becoming one of them, she actually found the exact opposite was true, that these online connections really strengthened their real-world bonds instead of replacing them. And look, this kind of deep study isn't just for fantasy worlds. It's happening right on our social media feeds too. Take researcher Sherry Turkle. She studies something she calls artificial intimacy. And her argument is, well, it's a little scary. She says a lot of us are actually running away from real, messy human conversations, and instead, we're forming these really deep emotional bonds with AI chatbots. So here's the bottom line. These anthropologists,
They don't just see games or apps. They see complex human societies, and they think they're worth some serious study.
Okay, so you have the anthropologists studying the communities that pop up inside these worlds, but the guy who created The Sims in the first place, well, he has a completely different take on why we're all playing.
I mean, what does the game's creator think about all this? Well, the guy's name is Will Wright, and he's totally fascinated by real-life complex systems. We're talking about things like how an ant colony works together, or how a city just kind of grows on its own. So he made these games, right, like SimCity and SimAnt, to let people play around with these big systems. But he was absolutely shocked when he found out that, when he gave players all the tools to build these huge, amazing imaginary worlds, what did they really want to do? They just wanted to build a simulation of their own suburban life. His conclusion was pretty simple and pretty funny. He said, as a games designer, one should never underestimate the narcissism of a player. Basically, he realized players aren't there to explore some new community. They're there to explore themselves. And that idea? Well, it's the driving force behind his latest and maybe his most ambitious project yet.
So Wright's new project is called Proxy, and it takes this whole idea of digital self-exploration to a totally mind-bending new level.
Okay, so here's how it's supposed to work. First, you start by putting in your own personal memories. Then you draw connections between them, linking this thought to that feeling. All this super personal data is then used to train a unique AI. And that AI builds a virtual world based on a model of your mind. And the final result? A proxy, a living, breathing digital twin of you. One that you can actually talk to, ask for advice, and learn from.
So, think about where we started, with a funny conversation about a useless sim dad, and we end up here, right on the edge of a new technology that lets us create an AI based on our own deepest memories. These digital worlds aren't just games anymore, are they? They're becoming a mirror for our own consciousness.
And that brings us to one final, kind of profound thought. As this technology actually becomes a reality, and you finally get the chance to speak to an AI that thinks just like you, what would you want to learn about the one person you thought you knew best? Yourself.